Okay, hello everyone. So in last lecture we have gone through the unit 3 topics. Okay, so today we have socket. Okay, as we have discussed earlier, socket is used for communicating and to communicate between client and server or two end systems. Okay. Socket makes ma- socket is made of two things. One is port number of the particular system, either client or server, and the IP address. Okay, so we can say socket number is equal to port number plus IP address. Okay, this is the how that socket forms. So, according to the definition, either we are following any mean of communication, either that is UDP or TCP. We have to use the socket abstraction to provide endpoint communication between processes. So whenever we want to communicate between two endpoint processes, then we have to provide socket. Okay, so socket is originated from BSD Unix. This is the variant of Unix operating system, but now the socket is also available for Unix, Linux, as well as Windows and Macintosh also. So inter-process communication consists of transmitting a message between a socket. Whenever inter-process communication we want to use, then the message transmission takes place by using socket in one process and it communicate with the socket in another process. Okay, like this is the diagram which explains these things. Means we have a port of any client system and we have a port of any server system, and if we want to communicate between these two systems, then the communication will take place using an IP address. Okay, so the combination of IP address and port address will become the socket. Okay, that's why I have already mentioned that if whenever we want to make communication between two endpoint processes, then we have to use socket for communication. Okay, then another topic what we have is stub and skeleton. These are two objects. One object takes place in client side and one object takes place in server side. Uh, that is the above layer of the above layer of our security layer, then over the transport layer. Okay, secure service layer that we have call it secure service layer. So the diagram is first we have secured service layer, then we have stub in the client side and skeleton in the server side, and the secure service layer takes place upon a transport layer. Okay, so when we call about stub and skeleton, these two terms come into existence. That method is called as remote method invocation. So whenever we want to invoke any method remotely, then we use stub and skeleton. The RMI is an API of for Java application. That there is mentioned, the RMI, remote method invocation, is an API that provide a mechanism to create distributed application in Java. Okay, so we can communicate with any system, but in network, but the prerequisite is that both end systems should have JVM, Java Virtual Machine should be installed in the both system. Then we can easily communicate with any system, or the installed method or the available method we can call it remotely. Okay, Java provide remote communication between application using two objects. These are stub and skeleton. So these are the two objects which are used for remote method invocation in Java. Stub is placed in the client side, skeleton will place in the server side. Okay, so what is the stub and skeleton? We have to go through it. So the first thing, that is, the RMA uses the stub and skeleton for communicating with remote object. The remote object means is an object whose method can be invoked from another JVM. That type of object are known as remote method. So first, stub stub is an object act as a gateway in the client side. Means this is a gateway which placed in the client side, and the all mean of communication should be routed through it. Okay, the all the outgoing requests are routed through it. It resides in the client on the client side and represent the remote object. Okay, it resides on the client side and it represents the client object whichever the server want to access. When the caller invoke the stub object, it does the following task. Okay, there are some tasks that stub has to perform. For example, if I want to communicate with a unknown person, then what I have to do? First, I have to initiate connection, means I have to go to nearby that person. I have to start talking with them. Then he will respond me. According to his response, I have to make confirmation that he want to talk to me or not. Then we will communicate. Okay, these are the 5 steps. So same steps we follow in stub communication by using RMI. The first one is, it initiate the connection between remote virtual machine. So the first thing that it has to make or to initiate the connection with RMI, remote virtual machine. That particular step involve the first step of RMI. Then it it writes and transmit. Okay, when we write means we have to write down the request, and transmission means the data which we want to transmit, either the request or the data, that data has to be converted in the format that it can be sent via the communication mean. Okay, basically that data it converted into bytes, and that byte have some checksum and some header, and then data that has to be transmitted. There are two types of mean that we can use that particular byte system. One that we discuss later on. So then we have to write and transmit. That thing is called as marshal. The parameters to the remote virtual machine. Okay. Then we have to wait for result because we have sent the data. Then we have to wait for the response from skeleton. If we receive the request response, then we have to read means again the encrypted data or the formatted data, we have to convert it into the format that the client or the stub object can recognize that particular data which we have received. That process is called unmarsling. Okay, it reads or unmarshal the return value or exception, and finally they return the value to the caller. Okay, same process is also called in the skeleton, means the skeleton is an object act as a gateway on the server. Same thing which we have gone through. That particular thing is the that is the control j. Stub is the object which resides in the client side, and skeleton is the object which resides in server side. Okay, these are the difference between client and stub and skeleton objects. Then all the incoming call routed through it same as in client side. All the income outgoing request should be routed through the stub object, and for skeleton all the incoming request should be routed through skeleton object. Okay, when the skeleton receive the incoming request, it has to follow certain steps. These are the steps which takes place in between these 5 steps that I will explain. Just first we have to go through it, then I will make the conversation with these two, stub and skeleton. First it has to read the parameters of the remote method, then invoke the method, actually the remote object, and then write and transmit the result. Okay, so the communication will take place using stub with skeleton. The first thing, it has to initiate the connection with JVM. Then it has to write and transmit the data to the JVM. Then skeleton will read the parameter from remote method. Then it invoke the method that actually remote object uh, that the remote object have. It has to read that. Then it write and transmit the result to the caller. Then for that time of period, it is that stub is waiting for the result. Then it read the return value or the exception, and then finally it return the value to the caller. Okay, this is the mean this is the total communication between stub and skeleton. Okay, we have to go through the diagrammatic representation of stub and skeleton. So this is the diagrammatic representation of stub and skeleton. We have in application layer we have client in client side and server in server side. So the client application layer is upon the stub layer and stub object, and the server is upon the skeleton object. These two object either in client side or server side, these two object take place upon the remote reference layer. This is the security layer which takes place upon the transport layer. This is the architecture of Java RMI architecture. Then these are the process which we have already gone through. Okay, this is the remote. This is about remote reference layer. Means the remote reference layer is responsible for implementing, invoking the protocols, either that is point to point or any other mean of communication that has to be taken place by the remote reference layer. Then the responsibility of transport layer. All these things I think you have already gone through in network OSI layer model or TCP layer model. These are same as you have done. This is the architecture. If a machine A wants to communicate with machine B, means a caller want to access the remote object, then it has to call using his stub object via an internet, and it pass the parameter to skeleton like this. Okay, this is all we have done. Then the next topic what we have is external data representation and marshalling. The external data representation means when we want to send the data through the network, then it has to be represented or it has to be converted in a particular format so it can pass through the network and it can easily understandable by the receiver. This is called as external data representation, and the process of conversion is called marshalling at the sender end. At the receiver end, vice versa process is called unmarshalling. Okay, so we have to go through the nodes. So external data representation, the information stored in running program, it represent a data structure. As we store our data in our system, that in our system, like either you are using C program or any programming language, if you want to store the name of a student, then you have to use the string type of data type. If you want to store the roll number, then you have to use integer data type. Same as this, the information which we want to store in a running program, it has to be represented as a data structure. It should use a particular type of data structure. Okay, so when we store the data, the individual primitive data item transmitted in a message can be data value to many different types. Okay, so when we want to send the data, it might possible that the data having multiple data types or the multiple data structure. And when we want to communicate with two systems, then we have to convert that data ultimately in the byte format. Okay, byte format means the data is ultimately converted into bits, but the collection of bit we convert it into a frame. That frame size is 1 byte, so that system is called byte format. So there are two types, two variant of ordering of integers, so called. First one is big ended and second one is little ended. In big ended, the most significant bit, okay, the most significant byte comes in the first. Okay, that means before the message, before the original data, we have to place the most significant byte. And in little ended, the most significant byte comes at the last. Means first we have to place the data, then the most significant bit will place. Okay, this is the format which is used for sending the data. Okay, one of the following method can be enabled to enable any two computer to exchange the binary data values. Whenever we want to communicate between two systems, then the data which transmitted over the communication medium should be binary, and there are two formats available. First one is the value is converted to a agreed external format before transmitting and converting to the local from the recipient. Okay, that means whenever we want to send the data, then the client and server has to agree in a proper format, in a common format. Then the data is converted into that format and then sent. This is the first format. This is the first category to exchange the data. And second one, the sender has to send the data in his own format and send an indication to the recipient so the recipient can convert the value. Okay, this is the second method. The whole method you can also say this the cryptography or the encryption of message. Means in first one, the sender and receiver has to agree in a common method or a common format that data has to be translated. And second one is the sender has to send the data and send an indication message or indication so the receiver can identify and convert the data in a proper manner so it can understand the data. So these are the two things. So all these things means converting the data. So the data structure which we are going to use, the order which we are going to use, and the mean of communication which we are going to use. These three things comes together and they will make the external data representation. Okay. Then the second one is marshalling. Marshalling is the process of taking collection of data items and assemble them into a form suitable for transmitting a message. This is known as marshalling. Marshalling means we have to collect the data, assemble it, and then convert in a format so we can transmit it. This is called marshalling. Unmarshalling is the just reverse process of marshalling, means we have to receive the data, deassemble it when arrival to the produce an equivalent correction of data items and at the destination, means when we receive the data at the destination, then we have to convert that data and deassemble it for recipient, so the data should be easy to understand for a recipient. That is called unmarshalling. So we have three type of marshalling techniques which widely used. First one is Corba. ठीक है, this is a common object representation technique that is known as Corba. The second one is Java object serialization. This is used by the JVM. And third one is XML, that is widely used for networking or the data exchange in the internet. Like any website or any mobile application uses that type of extension. And another one which is widely used is JSON. JSON, that is not mentioned here, but this is also a type of format that is used for communicating between two systems, that we have to convert our data into a proper format, JSON format. Then that JSON data is sent over the internet, and at the receiver end it will receive the data and convert it into the proper format so the recipient can understand. Okay, these are the three marshalling techniques. First one is Corba, second is Java object serialization, and third one is XML. And you can write down the fourth one as JSON. Okay, the fourth one is JSON is the format. JavaScript object notation, that is the abbreviation for JSON format. So the next topic is lexion algorithm and distributed processing, that we will go that we will resume in next lecture. Okay, hope you are understanding the notes. I will share these notes and you have already prepared the 5 unit of notes, so I don't think any problem. If in case you are facing any problem, then you can send me the message or you can post me. I will definitely respond you, or I will make another video lecture for you. And according to timetable, we also follow the Zoom sessions. Okay, so we can cover the syllabus on a proper speed. Okay, thank you class.